afternoon. I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. June marks the beginning of the wedding season and the most popular month for couples to get married. 10.8% of marriages in the U.S. happen in June. Coming in second is the month of August at 10.2%. There's a lot of time spent planning the wedding, but once the honeymoon is over and the thank you notes have been mailed, it's time for you to get your finances in order. My name is Sarah Landrum, and during today's webinar, What to Do When You Say I Do, you will get to hear about the changes that need to take place as soon as the wedding is over. We're going to talk about things like what paperwork needs to be updated, how to develop a budget. We're going to talk about how couples can help reduce their debt. And then we're also going to talk about preparing for the future. So we want to go ahead and start off with a poll question. And the poll question is, approximately how many marriages occur in the United States each year? Over 2 million? Over 3 million? 1.5 million? Or none of the above? I'll give you a second or two to think about that. And if you chose over 2 million, you are correct. A recent Pew study shows that about 2.2 million marriages happen every year in the United States. So we have a lot of people getting married and a lot of different things that you need to do to make sure you're ready for the next steps. So let's go ahead and get into the information. And we're going to talk about the paperwork that needs to be updated. But before we talk about the different kinds of paperwork and the different types of things that you need to update, I want to talk just briefly about marriage license or your marriage certificate. When you get married, whoever performs your service, whether it's a minister, whether it's a justice of the peace, what they will do is fill out the necessary paperwork, send it back to the clerk of the court who issued the license to you, and they have 5 days to do this in order for your marriage to be recorded. If they fail to do this, of course, your marriage will not be recorded. So one of the things that I like to encourage people to do is just to follow up to make sure that did get done. If you have a minister who does many services during the year and over the course of many years, they're used to doing this, but again, it's your information, so it's important for you to follow up to make sure that that does get sent in. Now also, whoever does the ceremony for you will give you a marriage certificate, and you take that with you. That is not a certified copy, but it does show that you were married on a certain day and who the witnesses were at the wedding as well. But it is not a certified copy. Now you can get, once the information has been issued to the clerk of the court, you can get certified copies, because some of the changes that you're going to have to make right after the wedding is over with, you're going to need a certified copy in order to do. So you can get this from the clerk of the court who issued you the marriage license, and they cost $12. And I like to recommend that you get a few copies, because you may need to send some off, and you won't have that once you send it off. So get at least 3 to 4 copies. And then that way you can ensure that you give it to whoever's going to need that. About 8% of women do not change their maiden name. So what that says is most women, when they are married, they do take their husband's last name. So when you do make that choice, because of course it's a choice and it's not a requirement, but when you do choose to take your husband's last name, then you are going to need to update your information. And the first step would be to update your Social Security card with the Social Security Administration. They do require a certified copy of your marriage certificate. So you are going to need to wait until you get those certificates to change that with the Social Security Administration. And also, too, it's important that you change your information with the Social Security Administration, because when you go to DMV to update your driver's license or state ID, you are going to have that updated with Social Security Administration first, because DMV does check with Social Security to make sure that's been updated. So be sure that you do that first. Of course, once you go to DMV and you get your driver's license updated and it has your new name, then you may be able to make other changes that we'll talk about today, and you may not be required to have a certified marriage certificate. They may just be able to take, whoever it is, may be able to take your driver's license and use that to make the changes. The next thing that I want to talk about is when you have a savings and you have a checking account. A couple of things that you're going to need to do here. First of all, you're going to, of course, need to change your name so everything is reported correctly. But you're also going to need to make a decision of whether you're going to add your spouse to your accounts. Are they going to be joint accounts? Or are you going to keep them separated? And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get to the budgeting part of the webinar. But if you are changing your name and you know that you're going to add your spouse to your account, you're going to do this as well. So you may have to do a couple of things in order to get those items updated, and you're going to check with your financial institution to see whatever the procedures are that you need to do in order to get your information updated. Also, your credit cards and loans, you're going to need to change your name on those as well, and you'll need to check with your credit card company or your financial institution, whoever you have the loan through, to see what those procedures are. Do they need a copy or certified marriage certificate, or can they take just your driver's license? So you'll need to check with them. If you are currently renting, and maybe this is something that you as a married couple will continue to do. So if you're renting and your name is on a lease, you want to check with your landlord, and you want to see what necessary changes or necessary steps it takes to change your name on the lease, as well as if you need to add someone to the lease. And then, of course, your mortgage, you need to change your name with either your mortgage company, or if you have your mortgage with a financial institution, you'll need to find out what necessary steps that you need to take with them as well. And not only are you going to have to change your name on these particular items or these particular businesses, but you are also going to probably need to do an address change. So again, you want to check with your financial institutions to see whatever it is that you need to do to get these changes made. And then also too, you're going to make some changes with your employer, so you need to visit either your HR department or your benefits department, whatever you call them, with your employer. One of the things that you need to make sure that you do is make changes in your payroll, your deductions. Now you are becoming a married person, so the way that you decide on how you want to take your deductions out, your taxes and so forth, what I like to recommend for couples is to check with your tax advisor, because of course when you file jointly the next year, if this is what you do, then you may need to make those changes so you're not paying in taxes at the end of the year. But again, you need to check with your tax advisor to see how you need to change those deductions, and then once you check with them, you can make those changes with your payroll department. Also too, your health insurance, you may be adding your spouse, or they may be adding you to their health insurance plans, so be sure to make those changes. If you have life insurance and you need to change your beneficiary, it could have been since you were single, maybe you had a parent or a relative as your beneficiary. Well, you'll want to make sure that you do update that if you want to make that change and make your spouse your beneficiary. Emergency contact information, of course you want to change that information as well, because if something arises, it's an emergency, and and your employer needs to contact your spouse, that they do have that information on file so they can contact them immediately. And also to your retirement funds, you probably at some point, if you have a 401k plan or if you have a defined retirement plan, then you probably chose a beneficiary when you started putting money in your 401k plan, or when you signed up for your defined retirement plan. So you want to make sure that you change the beneficiaries so they can be updated as well, because failure to do this, and if something happens in the future, you may not have the right person and the person who you wanted to receive funds as the beneficiary. That way you know for sure you have that updated and the right person will get that. And then the next step to couples that need to develop a budget. A lot of couples do this before they get married. In the very beginning of their relationship, they start talking about income and expenses and different things like that. But sometimes couples don't. Maybe you were so involved with planning the wedding that you didn't think about what would happen after the wedding. But developing a budget is very important because you are now earning income that is more than what you were earning as a single person. And sometimes people are tempted to spend more because they make more. But one of the things that you need to keep in mind is that you are going to not only have more income, which is great, but you're also going to have more expenses. So what you'll need to do is sit down and first of all figure out how much income that you're going to be receiving on a monthly basis, because this is the way that you normally pay for your expenses. You pay them on a monthly basis. So you want to sit down and figure out what your income is, and then you need to figure out what your expenses are going to be. And of course you want to have more income than you have expenses. And one of the things that I would like to recommend today, and we're going to look at this program for both developing a budget as well as the reducing your debt part of the webinar. We're going to look at this program for both of the things that we're going to be discussing, because it helps you with a budget as well as your debt management. And it's called Savvy Money. Originally the program was called Debt and Focus, and it was created by the Filene Institute in 2009. Filene is a research company that helps credit unions develop products and services for their members, and this particular program is free and it is anonymous, and that's what I like so much about it, because people will use the program if they know that nobody else can see their information. So in 2012, Savvy Money decided to acquire the Debt and Focus, and of course changed the name, but it still works the same. And I'm going to take you out very briefly to the website, and you can actually find this also on myDCCU.com. And if you go to the Learn and Grow section, you'll see Money Checkup. And of course you see Jean Chatsky. She has a video on here if you want to listen to that at your convenience. We won't do that today. But if you've never used the program before, you are going to click on the Get Started. If for some reason you have, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, if you're a returning visitor and you've already did your profile, then you can go back and just click this, and we'll put your number in, because we talked about it being free and being anonymous. So what happens is when you first get into Savvy Money, you'll see up here in the right hand corner, it's a revisit ID. And this is your number, because that's all you are to Savvy Money, is your number. And you're going to fill out some information, which we're going to go back to this, so I'm not going to fill out the information yet, but you'll fill out some information about yourself, and then we're going to put in your income, and of course we'll put in both of your incomes because now you're a couple and you're merging your incomes together. You're going to put in debt, any kind of debt, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, that you owe. You're also going to put in your monthly expenses, and then the program will allow you to see results. So it helps you to figure out a budget monthly, and the good thing about the system is you can always go back and update it as your financial situation changes. Maybe you pay off some debt. Maybe you get a raise. Maybe you have children and your expenses will change as well. So you can go back and you can update your information as you go along, and it saves it as long as you just remember that you do have a revisit ID. So make sure you do write that down when you first start using the program. Otherwise, you won't be able to get back into it and you'll have to start over. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about debt. And one of the things that happens when couples get married is they bring debt into the marriage. Now, as we talk about credit reports, I want everybody to understand that everybody has an individual credit report. There are no joint credit reports. So if you're married, of course, the husband will have his individual credit report and the wife will have her individual credit report. Now, as you move along in the future as a couple, and maybe you start taking out loans in both of your names, you will have what we call joint credit, but you will still have an individual credit report. Many couples begin marriage with one or both partners in debt from student loans or credit cards. And TransUnion, which is one of the 3 credit reporting agencies, they have a recent study that shows that loan balances have increased 75% from 2007 to 2012, and then the average debt per borrower now stands at about almost $24,000 on student loan debt, and then the average credit card debt borrowers have is a little bit over $5,000. So you see, as people are getting married, they're bringing debt into the marriage, and that, of course, should be a plan that you talk about before the marriage, but not everybody does. So the first step that you are going to want to do is you need to figure out how much debt you have. Sometimes people don't know how much debt they have, but in order for you to do that, you can visit annualcreditreport.com. And this particular website is managed by the Federal Trade Commission and the 3 credit reporting agencies, which is TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. And in 2003, there was an amendment to the Fair Credit Reporting Act that says every U.S. consumer has the right to get a free credit report from each of the 3 credit reporting agencies in a 12-month period. And a lot of times you'll hear commercials that will advertise different websites who say they're going to give you a free credit report or a free credit score. And that may or may not be true, but sometimes you'll visit these sites and then you'll find out they want your credit card information at the end. Well, this is the legitimate site, annualcreditreport.com, that you want to go to. And we're going to go to it real quick because I like for you to see it. Because once you pull your credit report, I want you to know that you are on the legitimate site, which is annualcreditreport.com, so you can see this. And you'll notice here it's brought to you by Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. And normally I would recommend, if you are just monitoring your credit report just to be sure there's no fraud, identity theft, different things like that, I would recommend that you space it out over the course of a year, maybe get one in January, one in June, and then one at the end of the year. But since you need to look at all the debt that both you and your new spouse has, I'd recommend that you go ahead and get all 3 copies. And the reason why is because sometimes certain store credit card companies, they don't report to all three. Most of your major credit card companies do. Most of your financial institutions do, but sometimes your store credit card companies do not. So you want to make sure that you get a clear picture of all the debt that you have out there. And this is one of the times that I do recommend that you get all three, so you can have a clear picture and you know exactly the debt that you're bringing into your new life with your spouse. So now we are going to go back and we're going to look at Savvy Money, because we talked about it helping you both with your budget and with reducing your debt and managing your debt obligations. So we are going to fill out some information because it likes to know who you are. And we'll kind of go through this pretty quickly because I don't want to take up too much time. I think when you get into the program, I think you'll like it. I think you'll find it very easy to use. So I'm just going to put in some random information. And it wants to know, what is your immediate financial goal? It could be create a budget and get out of debt. Of course, you can only choose one, so we'll just say create a budget. And it's also going to want to know what your credit score is. Sometimes people know what their credit score is and sometimes you don't. So if you want to just kind of put it, or I'll put it here in the middle, but if you know what it is, you can you can put it to where it should be. We'll just say it's a 660. And also too, I do want to mention while we're talking about credit scores, because we're not going to really get into a whole lot about them today, but we will be doing in the next couple of months, we will be doing a credit score webinar, and we'll talk about things that will affect your credit score and kind of what credit scores are. So be on the lookout for that if you'd like to join us, so that way you can learn a little bit more about credit scores and how they work and how they can affect you. So how do you pay your debts would be the next question, and depending on your situation, and I'll just say I can only make minimum payments. And then this is where you're going to put in your income. And we'll just say that it's $40,000. And let's say that your spouse also makes the same amount every year. And that would be other household income. I'll put that in. You could come over here and do the annual income calculator as well. I think it's easier to do it over here, but either one works. And then we live in the state of Virginia, and hopefully everybody who's listening today lives in the state of Virginia, but if you are out of state listening, then you can choose whichever state you live in. And in the state of Virginia, you pay about 29% in taxes. And then once we put that in, we're going to click on Next. And now this is where we're going to enter our debt. And of course, you know, if you have a mortgage now, you would put in what your mortgage payment is, as well as what financial institution you have it at, what your balance is. Let's just say, I won't say 40 again. I chose that just now. Let's say your balance is about 100,000, and of course, the system wants to know what your interest rate is. If you don't know, you can estimate it. If you want it perfect on here, then you may need to look it up if you don't know what it is. But let's just say your mortgage payment's 4% right now. You'll put in what your minimum payment is, and we'll just say your minimum payment is $800. And actual payment just means what you're paying on it. And you can put in your estimated value. Let's say it's $140,000. If you have a vehicle loan, you're going to list that. We talked about credit cards and the credit card debt that normally people bring with them into a marriage. It will also let you choose if you have a student loan, different other types of different loans as well. But we'll go ahead and go to Next so we don't take up too much time. And it carries over any debt that you have. If you had a car payment, it would carry it over. Now the next thing that you want to enter in is your expenses, what you pay a month. And of course, if you have a home, you're not going to pay rent. So one or the other, either your mortgage payment or your rent. So let's go to transportation. What do you pay insurance a month? We'll say that. And I'm just going to put in some figures. Of course, what I'm putting in is going to be less than what you're going to be putting in. Okay, and let's say you pay about $200 in groceries a month. Do you save anything? Do you have money going into your 401k plan? Do you have an emergency fund, which we're going to talk about shortly? Let's just click on See Results. That would be the next step. And then what happens here is a couple of things. We talked about the importance of having a budget. And we can click here to look at View Budget. And what happens is it tells you what your monthly income is after taxes, because of course you don't have that money in your hand. So it's important to build your budget after you pay your taxes. Expenses and savings, minus anything less there, it's going to take that away. And then it's going to tell you what your monthly income is after your expenses. This number here should not be negative. If it is, you'll have to go back and look at your budget again to see where you can find some money. You need to rework it, look at the expenses that you have and how you're spending. And it also too tells you what you should be paying about the percentage in that particular category based on your income. And if you're over, you'll need to make some changes. Of course, this looks good because we didn't put in all of our monthly expenses. Okay, so then what we'll want to do now is let's go back and look at our results again, because the next thing that we talked about is having a debt or debt reduction in your budget. You want to reduce that debt that you're paying as a couple, so you can meet some of your future goals. So what Savvy Money also does is it tells you a couple of different things. It tells you your revolving debt ratio, and what a revolving debt ratio is kind of like utilization, which is a part of your credit score. It's 30% of your credit score. It basically means the balances that you have on your credit cards versus the availability that you have. And you always want to keep that number under 30%. That just is something that lenders look at. It is factored into your credit score, and you always want to keep that at 30% or lower. So you can have a higher credit score, and having a higher credit score can also help you to have a lower interest rate when you apply for a loan. And then the next thing that you want to look at is your debt to income ratio. And of course, for this particular this profile here, it says that it's healthy, and that's where you always want to be. But a debt to income ratio is the amount of debt obligations that you have versus what your monthly gross income is. And this is a factor that lenders use to make loan decisions. You always want to keep that figure at 35% or lower at all times. Lenders, when they are making loan decisions, they want to make sure that that number is not, or most lenders, no higher than 36%. And then the next thing that you can do, and I really love this, is you can view a payoff plan option. And there's a couple of different plans that you can look at doing. Of course, if you do it without a plan, you can look at what your payoff schedule is. You can see how much interest you're going to be paying. You can see how much principal you're going to be paying. Also, too, when you get back to that payoff schedule, you can also look at what is called a debt stacking plan, as well as a snowball effect. And let's look at the debt stacking. First of all, let's see what that means. Debt stacking means that you pay off your highest interest loan first. And this is the best choice if you are motivated by paying the least amount of interest. And of course, the less interest that you pay, the less money that you pay. So that's a great benefit if that's what you want to do. And also too, you can look at a pay schedule for that. And it'll do the same thing as if you didn't have a plan that we just looked at. Interest, principal, your remaining balance, and it'll show how long it'll take you to pay it off. And then the other plan is what we call the snowball effect. And this pays off your lowest balances first. And this is the best choice if you have too many small loans and you want to see early success. So what you'll need to do is figure out what plan is best for you. And you can also put in, if you want to make extra payments, you'll notice here, if you want to make make an additional one-time payment, or maybe you have extra money at the end of the month and you want to pay every month a little bit more, and even if it's $10, even if it's $100 a month, it's going to help you pay off your debt sooner. And of course, that will allow you as a couple to meet those future goals that you want to meet, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes, preparing for the future. And then some other ways to reduce your debt. Pay as much as you can, which I kind of mentioned just now. Gifts or bonuses. Sometimes you receive gifts, and that should always be included in your income when you also are preparing a budget. We think about a lot of times when we prepare a budget that we just want to put in our salary that we make every month, but sometimes you get gifts, and that's also a part of income. Bonuses, a lot of employers offer bonuses, whether it's a Christmas bonus or whether it's a stakeholders bonus or something that, how well the company grows. If you get a bonus, think about applying some of that to your debt, because it's going to help you reduce the interest that you pay, and you're going to end up saving money. Tax refunds, great way at the beginning of the year when you get that tax refund to put some down on your debt. I'm not telling you have to put it all down, because it's nice to have a little bit of fun money, but use some of that to pay down debt. You will not be sorry in the future. Second job. A lot of times people don't want to think about working a second job, but the time spent at a second job, it may just be worth your while. You'll see that debt paid off, and you'll start reaching those future goals as a couple that you want to reach. So that might be an opportunity for you. Also, cut back on wants. Let's say that you enjoy eating out. Maybe you eat out a lot through the week. Think about maybe not eating out as much, and what you would have spent eating out, put that on your debt, and that can help you pay it back quicker and also reduce the interest that you're paying. Other things to kind of think about too, remember we talked about when you become a couple and now you have two incomes versus one, and it's very easy to overspend. These are some ways that people can overspend, and it catches up with you. In the very beginning you don't see it, but then all of a sudden it catches up with you. Vacations. One of the things that I like to recommend is, instead of taking your credit card and paying for a vacation and then paying it back over the course of a year, and of course you have to pay interest if you don't pay it off at the end of the month, have a vacation club separate from like your savings account, and make a budget. Determine how much you want to spend on your vacation, whether it's $200, whether it's $500, whether it's $1,000, and save that money through the course of the year. When it's time to go on vacation, now you have the money, you have it saved, and you don't have to rely on a credit card to fund your vacation, and then you have to pay it off over the course of a year. Gifts too. Gifts can kind of sneak up on us, and we don't realize how much we spend on gifts. And one of the main times of the year that we spend a lot of money on gifts is Christmas. Open a Christmas club account. Put money in it through the course of the year. Again, set a budget. Determine what you want to spend on Christmas. Stick to that budget, and then when your Christmas club comes due, you can go out, you can buy your gifts. You don't have to use your credit card, and you don't have to pay it off over the course of the year. And then Christmas comes back all over again, and it's time to start that vicious cycle. And then also, too, entertainment. And I think a great example of this is maybe somebody that wants to buy a big screen TV. Instead of using your credit card to pay for it, save the money. Pay cash for it. And always remember that if you can't afford it, if you can't pay cash for it, you probably don't need it. Because if you charge something on a credit card and you pay it off over the course of time, then of course you pay interest as well as whatever the original cost of that big screen TV was. Credit cards are not bad things, because credit cards can bring us benefits. They can bring us reward points. We can get cash back on some programs. But the thing about credit cards is, if you're going to use them to pay for something, make sure you can pay that off at the end of the month when the bill comes due, and you don't have interest applied to that. So it's like you're using the card, but you're paying for it with cash. And then preparing for the future. Always make sure that you have an emergency fund. And I want to ask you a question. Let's say your refrigerator broke today. Would you have the money to go out and buy a new one, or would you have to use a credit card to pay for it? Or maybe your car needs tires, or maybe the engine blew up and you have to fix it. Would you have the money today to pay for that? What we recommend is for you to have an emergency fund, and you should always have 3 to 6 months of budgeted expenses saved, because you never know what's going to happen. A job loss, an emergency, something comes up. But if you have 3 to 6 months of budgeted expenses saved, then you don't have to worry about what's going to happen, because you have the money there. So make that a priority as you begin to look at your budgets and begin to work together as a couple. Just make sure that you start saving for emergencies and things that come up that you just may not know were going to come. They just come in unexpectedly. And then also to review your retirement accounts, and a financial advisor is a great person to help you with this, because maybe now as a couple you want to retire at the same time. So you'll need to make sure you're putting enough in your retirement account to have that certain amount, or maybe you want to retire by a certain age. So make sure you have a financial advisor help you, and that way you are able to retire in that time frame that you wanted to. Also, too, children. Maybe you've talked about this and maybe you haven't, but the cost to raise a child from the age of 0 to 18 is about $240,000. That's not including college. So if you plan to have children, think about those costs. And I thought to myself as I was preparing for this webinar, I thought, thank goodness you don't have to have that up front when you have a child. Of course, it's over the course of those 18 years that you're going to spend that much money, but be sure that you are preparing for those things, because children kind of take us through, I think, phases. We start out in that baby stage, and diapers and formula and different things like that are so expensive. And then they get to school, and then they may be involved in sports, and then they get into different activities that can cost a lot of money. So think about those things as you plan for children, and prepare and put money back, knowing that that's how much it's going to cost you to raise just one child. And then also to create a will if you have not done this already. Now, if you do have a will and you're just entering into your marriage, make sure you update your will. But if you haven't, because research shows us about 55% of people don't have a will. So it is important, because these are your assets. These are the things that you want to decide before something happens, that go to certain people, or how that will work for you. So be sure to create that will, and then that way you don't have to leave your family with that guesswork. And also too, we're getting ready to end the webinar, so hopefully this information has been very useful for you today as you start your new life together. And want to say congratulations, but also too, I have some resources here that I want to share with you that will tell you how you need to update your information. We talked about that paperwork at the very beginning, the paperwork that you need to do and the changes that need to be made. So the first website here is the Social Security Administration, and this is the form that you will need in order to get your name changed, addresses updated, and so forth. You can visit this website. It will give you more information. Also, to DMV's website, you do have to go to DMV in order to make your changes. You can't do them online. So you have to visit one of the DMV centers in order to do this. But you can print the form that you need prior to going in. That way you can have it filled out when you get there. Also, two passports was something else that you need to update, and this is the website you can go to that tells you exactly what you need to do to update your passport. And the last two websites that I have put on here, we talked just now about having a will prepared. We do recommend that you seek professional advice when preparing a will, but there are pretty good websites out there that can kind of walk you through the process if you don't want to pay a lawyer to do it. And LegacyWriter.com as well as NOAA.com are two different websites that you can visit. So that really is all the information that I have for you today. Again, thank you for joining us, and I hope you were able to get some good information that will help you get all these changes and different things that you need to do with the budget and debt management as well. So I hope you learned something today, and we want to say congratulations, and we wish you a very wonderful life together. Thank you, and have a good rest of the day.